What happens when one of the most trusted journalists in television sits down with royalty, expecting a candid conversation, only to witness a complete meltdown that shocks the entire nation? In just 36 seconds, a single comment would unravel everything, turning what should have been a respectful interview into an absolute disaster that left everyone in the studio speechless. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping moment, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because we're pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about this outrageous behavior. Now, let's get into what really went down inside that studio. Anderson Cooper sat across from Prince Harry in the iconic 60-minute studio. The lights were perfect, the cameras were rolling, and millions of viewers at home were ready to hear what the prince had to say. Anderson, always the professional, always the gentleman, started with a simple, straightforward question. Nothing confrontational, nothing tricky, just a basic question to get the conversation started. "Thank you for being here today," Anderson said with that calm, measured tone he's known for. "I think a lot of people are curious about your perspective on everything that's happened over the past few years. Can you walk us through your decision to step back from royal duties?" It seemed like a reasonable starting point, an easy question, the kind of question any good interviewer would ask. But the response? Nobody saw it coming. Prince Harry shifted in his seat, and there was this look on his face. Not thoughtful, not reflective, but annoyed. Like he couldn't believe he was being asked such a thing. "Well, Anderson," Harry began, his voice dripping with condescension, "I'm not sure you'd understand the complexities of what it means to be born into a life like mine. The pressures, the expectations, the constant scrutiny. It's not something someone like you could comprehend. Someone like you." Those words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Anderson's eyebrows raised just slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. But he remained composed, professional, as always. "I appreciate that it's a unique situation," Anderson replied, keeping his tone even and respectful. "But that's exactly why I'm asking. To help our viewers understand your experience, can you elaborate on what those pressures felt like?" Instead of answering the question, Harry leaned back in his chair and let out this dismissive laugh. Not a genuine laugh, but one of those laughs that says, "You really don't get it, do you?" "The thing is, Anderson, people like you have built entire careers asking questions, prying into other people's lives. But you've never had to live under the kind of microscope I have. You sit here in your comfortable studio, making millions, asking your little questions, and you think you understand struggle. You think you understand sacrifice." The tension in the room was immediately palpable. The camera crew exchanged glances. The producers off set were frozen. This wasn't going according to plan. This wasn't how interviews on 60 Minutes were supposed to go. Anderson, to his credit, didn't take the bait. He remained calm, his voice steady. "I'm here to listen to your story, not to compare experiences," Anderson said. "Our viewers want to hear from you directly, so let's focus on that. What was the turning point for you? What made you decide that leaving was the right choice?" But Harry wasn't interested in having a real conversation. He was on some kind of mission to prove a point, to assert dominance, to make it clear that he was above this whole thing. "The turning point?" Harry repeated, his tone mocking. "The turning point was realizing that no matter what I did, people like you would twist my words. You'd take everything I say and spin it into whatever narrative fits your agenda. That's what you do, isn't it? That's what all journalists do." Anderson's jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough to show that the comment had landed. But he didn't lose his cool. He didn't snap back. He simply nodded and tried to redirect. "I understand there's been a lot of media coverage, and not all of it fair," Anderson said. "But that's not what we're trying to do here today. This is your opportunity to set the record straight, to tell your truth without any filters. Isn't that why you agreed to this interview?" Harry scoffed. Actually scoffed. Like a teenager who'd just been told to clean his room. "My truth?" he said, air quoting with his fingers in the most condescending way possible. "See? That's the problem right there. You think there's some truth I need to tell you, like I owe you an explanation, like I owe anyone an explanation. I don't owe you anything, Anderson. I came here as a courtesy, but clearly, this was a mistake." Anderson took a breath, a deep, measured breath. The kind of breath you take when you're trying very hard not to say what you're really thinking. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Anderson said. "But I think our viewers would appreciate hearing your perspective. That's all I'm trying to do here. Give you a platform to share your side of things." "A platform?" Harry laughed again, this bitter, ugly laugh. You think you're giving me a platform? I don't need your platform, Anderson. I don't need 60 minutes. I don't need any of this. You need me. Your show needs me. Without people like me coming on here, what do you have? Nothing. Just another boring news program that nobody watches. The insult was clear, direct, cutting. And it wasn't just aimed at Anderson. It was aimed at the entire institution of 60 Minutes, one of the most respected news programs in television history. The crew members off camera were visibly uncomfortable now. This had crossed a line. Anderson's expression changed. Not to anger, but to something else. Disappointment? Maybe? Or resolve? I have to respectfully disagree, Anderson said, his voice firm but controlled. 60 Minutes has been on the air for over 50 years because we focus on important stories and treat our guests with respect. We've interviewed presidents, world leaders, artists, activists, people who have something meaningful to contribute. I invited you here today because I believed you had something meaningful to say. If I was wrong about that, then perhaps we should end this now. That should have been a wake-up call. That should have been the moment Harry realized he'd gone too far. But instead, he doubled down. Oh, is that a threat? Harry said, leaning forward now, his voice rising. Are you threatening me, Anderson? Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea what kind of influence I have? One word from me and your career could be over. One interview with another network and nobody will remember your name. The room went silent, dead silent. Even the hum of the camera seemed to fade away. Anderson stared at Harry for a long moment, and you could see the wheels turning. You could see him making a decision. I think we're done here, Anderson said quietly. He reached up and removed his microphone, setting it on the table between them. I've spent my entire career interviewing people from all walks of life. Some of them have been difficult. Some of them have been defensive. But I've never had a guest sit in that chair and disrespect not just me, but the entire team that works on this program. We treat people with dignity here. We expect the same in return. Harry's face went red. Actually red, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're ending the interview, he sputtered. You're kicking me off? Do you have any idea what this will look like? Do you know what people will say? Anderson stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with the kind of calm authority that comes from years of experience. I know exactly what people will say, Anderson replied. And I'm okay with that. This interview is over. Thank you for your time. Harry sat there, stunned, like he genuinely couldn't process what was happening. The producers were already moving in, signaling to the crew to stop recording. But Harry wasn't done. Oh no, he wasn't done. This is ridiculous, Harry shouted, standing up now too. You can't just end this. I came all the way here. I rearranged my entire schedule for this. You're making a huge mistake, Anderson. A huge mistake. Anderson didn't respond. He simply walked off the set, his head held high, leaving Harry standing there in front of the cameras, still shouting, still demanding attention like a child throwing a tantrum. You'll regret this, Harry yelled after him. Everyone will know what you did. Everyone will know how unprofessional you are. This is unacceptable. But Anderson was already gone, disappeared behind the studio doors, leaving his team to deal with the mess. And what a mess it was. The crew members stood there, unsure of what to do. Do they keep filming? Do they escort Harry out? Do they call security? One of the producers, a woman who'd been with 60 Minutes for over 20 years, stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, she said, her voice polite but firm. Harry turned on her, his face still flushed with anger. Who are you to ask me to leave? He snapped. Do you know who you're talking to? I do, she said calmly, and I'm asking you to leave. This interview is over. We'll escort you out. For a moment, it looked like Harry might refuse. Like he might actually stand there and continue his tantrum. But even he seemed to realize how bad this looked, how utterly childish and entitled he appeared. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, yanking it on with jerky, angry movements. Fine, he muttered. This is a joke anyway. A complete joke. You people have no idea what you're doing. He stormed off the set, his footsteps echoing through the studio, and slammed the door behind him so hard that it rattled in its frame. The crew stood there in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Meanwhile, Anderson was in his dressing room, sitting quietly, letting the adrenaline fade. A knock came at the door, and the executive producer walked in. Are you okay? She asked. Anderson nodded, loosening his tie. I'm fine. That was something. That was insane, she corrected. I've never seen anything like that in 30 years of doing this. He completely lost it. He did, Anderson agreed. And honestly, I gave him every opportunity to turn it around. I tried to steer the conversation back on track multiple times, but he wasn't interested in having a conversation. He just wanted to grandstand and insult people. You handled it perfectly, the producer said. You gave him respect, even when he didn't deserve it. And when he crossed the line, you ended it. That's exactly what you should have done. Anderson sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just hope people understand why I did it. I don't want this to become some big scandal or distraction. It won't be, she assured him. Anyone who watches that footage will see exactly what happened. They'll see you being professional and him being completely out of line. You did the right thing. Back on the set, the crew was already packing up equipment, shaking their heads and murmuring to each other about what they just witnessed. One camera operator, a guy who'd been filming interviews for 60 Minutes for 15 years, couldn't believe what he'd seen. I filmed interviews with dictators who were more respectful than that, he said to his colleague. I filmed interviews with convicted criminals who had better manners. That was unbelievable. Did you see his face when Anderson ended it? Another crew member chimed in. He genuinely thought he could say whatever he wanted and there would be no consequences. Like the rules didn't apply to him. That's exactly what he thought. The first camera operator replied. He thought his title meant he could treat people however he wanted. He learned today that it doesn't. Word of what happened spread through the 60 Minutes offices within minutes. Staffers who hadn't been in the studio were getting texts and calls from colleagues, asking if it was true. Did Prince Harry really get kicked off the show? Did he really insult Anderson Cooper? Did he really throw a tantrum? Yes. Yes to all of it. The senior producers gathered in a conference room to discuss what to do with the footage. Do they air it? Do they shelve it? Do they release a statement? We have to air it, one producer argued. If we don't, people will speculate. They'll make up their own version of what happened. At least if we show the footage, people can see the truth. But is it news? Another producer countered. Or is it just drama? Are we crossing a line by airing someone's meltdown? He's the one who crossed the line, the first producer shot back. We didn't ambush him. We didn't trick him. Anderson asked fair, respectful questions, and Harry responded with insults and arrogance. That's on him, not us. After much debate, they decided to air a portion of the interview, along with an explanation from Anderson about why it ended early. They wouldn't sensationalize it, but they wouldn't hide it either. The viewers deserved to know what happened. When the episode finally aired, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with comments. Most people sided with Anderson, praising him for standing up for himself and his team. They called him a class act, a true professional, someone who knew when enough was enough. Anderson Cooper handled that with such grace, one viewer tweeted. He gave Harry every chance to have a real conversation, and Harry threw it away. Good for Anderson for not tolerating that disrespect. I've been watching 60 Minutes my entire life, another person wrote. I've never seen an interview end like that. Anderson did the right thing. Nobody should have to sit there and be insulted like that. But of course, there were Harry's defenders too. People who claimed Anderson was too sensitive, that he should have pushed through. That ending the interview made him look weak. Anderson couldn't handle a little pushback, one comment read. Harry was just being honest about how the media works. Anderson got his feelings hurt and ran away. But those comments were in the minority. Most people saw exactly what happened. They saw entitlement. They saw arrogance. They saw someone who genuinely believed the world revolved around them and couldn't handle being treated like everyone else. Industry insiders weighed in too. Other journalists, other hosts, other producers. And almost unanimously, they supported Anderson's decision. There's a difference between a tough interview and a disrespectful interview, one veteran journalist said in an interview. Anderson wasn't trying to gotcha him. He wasn't being aggressive. He was doing his job, asking fair questions. And Harry responded with personal attacks. No journalist should have to tolerate that. I've walked out of interviews before, another host admitted. Sometimes you reach a point where you realize the person sitting across from you isn't interested in having a conversation. They're interested in dominating you, belittling you, making themselves feel important. When you recognize that, the best thing you can do is end it. Anderson recognized it and did what he had to do. Meanwhile, Harry's team went into damage control mode. They released a statement saying the interview had been a mutual decision to end early, that there were creative differences, that both parties felt it wasn't the right fit. But nobody was buying it. The footage spoke for itself. Creative differences? One commentator laughed during a panel discussion. We all saw what happened. That wasn't creative differences. That was a meltdown. That was someone who couldn't handle being asked basic questions and lashed out like a spoiled child. The whole incident became a case study in entitlement. Talk shows discussed it, podcasts dissected it, media analysts used it as an example of what happens when someone's sense of importance becomes so inflated that they forget how to interact with other human beings. This is what happens when you surround yourself with yes people, one psychologist explained during a television interview. When everyone around you constantly tells you you're special, you're important, you're above the rules, you start to believe it. And then when someone treats you like a normal person, like Anderson did, you can't handle it. You perceive it as an attack. Anderson, for his part, didn't dwell on it. He moved on to his next interview, his next story, his next assignment. That's what professionals do. They don't get caught up in drama. They don't hold grudges. They do their job with integrity and move forward. But the lesson from that day lingered. It became a reminder that respect is a two-way street. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or what titles you hold. When you sit down for an interview, you're entering into an agreement. The interviewer will treat you with respect and give you a platform to share your voice. In return, you treat them with respect and engage in good faith. Harry violated that agreement. He walked into that studio thinking his status would shield him from accountability. He thought he could say whatever he wanted, insult whomever he wanted, and there would be no consequences because of who he was. He was wrong. Anderson showed him, and everyone watching, that respect matters more than royalty, that professionalism matters more than privilege, that there are still people in this world who won't tolerate being treated poorly, no matter who's doing the treating. The interview that was supposed to be Harry's moment to control his narrative became instead a showcase of everything wrong with entitlement culture. It became a viral moment, but not for the reasons Harry intended. It became a lesson in what not to do, how not to behave, and why character matters more than credentials. In the days following the incident, other stories started emerging. People who'd worked with Harry in various capacities began sharing their own experiences, painting a picture of someone who often struggled with treating others as equals. Staff members, event coordinators, journalists, the pattern was clear. He's always had this edge, one former staff member said anonymously. Like he's doing you a favor by acknowledging your existence? It's exhausting to be around. These weren't hit pieces. These were observations from people who'd interacted with him professionally and walked away feeling diminished. And now, after watching what happened with Anderson, they felt validated. They felt like finally, someone had stood up and said enough. The 60-minute studio became a symbol of accountability that day, a reminder that even the most famous, most privileged people in the world can't escape the basic rules of human decency. Anderson Cooper became a hero to anyone who'd ever been talked down to, dismissed, or disrespected by someone who thought they were better. And Harry? Harry became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you let ego override empathy, when you confuse status with substance, when you forget that every person you encounter deserves basic respect. The cameras captured it all. Every eye roll, every condescending comment, every moment of escalating tension. And when Anderson finally stood up and walked away, the cameras captured that too. The moment a seasoned journalist decided his dignity was worth more than a ratings grab. That's the thing about moments like these. They reveal character. They strip away the polish and the PR and show who people really are when they're challenged. Anderson's character shone through. Calm, composed, respectful until the very end, but unwilling to compromise his values for anyone. Harry's character showed too. And it wasn't pretty. The interview that never finished became more talked about than most complete interviews ever are. It sparked conversations about power dynamics, about media ethics, about how we treat service workers and people we perceive as beneath us. It made people examine their own behavior and ask themselves, am I doing this too? Am I treating people with the respect they deserve? In the world of television journalism, the incident became legendary. It was added to training materials as an example of how to handle a difficult guest with grace. Anderson's calm professionalism under pressure became a master class in maintaining composure. This is how you do it, one journalism professor told her students, showing them clips of the interview. You stay calm, you stay respectful, you give them every opportunity to course correct. And if they refuse, if they continue to cross lines, you protect your integrity and walk away. Anderson Cooper showed us how it's done. The students watched, taking notes, seeing a real-world example of theory put into practice, seeing what happens when preparation meets principle, when experience guides decision-making, when someone values their self-respect more than their ego. For Anderson, it was just another day at work. A difficult day, Certainly. An unusual day? Absolutely. But ultimately, just another example of why he's remained at the top of his profession for so long. He knows who he is. He knows what he stands for. And he's not willing to compromise either of those things for a viral moment or a ratings boost. That's integrity. That's professionalism. That's what separates the great journalists from the merely famous ones. The empty chair where Harry sat became iconic in its own way, a symbol of what happens when entitlement meets accountability, a reminder that no interview, no matter how anticipated, is worth sacrificing your values. And somewhere, in studios around the world, other journalists took note. They saw what Anderson did and felt empowered to set their own boundaries, to demand their own respect, to know when to say enough is enough. That's the real legacy of those 36 seconds. Not the drama, not the conflict, but the reminder that everyone, from princes to producers, from hosts to camera operators, deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. And when that dignity is violated, there should be consequences. Anderson Cooper taught us that lesson without raising his voice, without stooping to insults, without compromising who he is. He simply stood up, removed his microphone, and walked away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is know when to leave. Anderson knew, and in doing so, he reminded us all what real strength looks like.